I'm Jackie, a therapist at Hutton Therapy, and thank you for watching this video. So are you finding that you're struggling to cope day to day because of anxiety, because of this constant stream of anxious thoughts, or maybe sometimes you feel better, but then sometimes you're triggered or worried about the future, and then it starts and these thoughts start in your brain, and maybe it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And sometimes you can get out of it by perhaps talking to someone, distracting yourself, um, different ways, but it just seems to be this reoccurring pattern that is exhausting. And maybe that leads you just feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, or maybe quite like agitated. If so, thank you so much for watching this video, and I really hope and believe that this is going to be helpful, you watching this. So first of all, why do we feel like this? So essentially, we expect bad things to happen because they did happen. In the past, at some point or another, something bad happened. And trauma, you can say big T traumas, like those really horrific traumas that we know of, or even small T traumas, bad things have happened, and in our past, and now the body, on a level that we're not even realizing it, is expecting bad things to happen. And it's gotten to the point of, maybe you kind of feel like the world's a bit scary sometimes, or it feels dangerous sometimes, or you feel like you can't control things. So to deal with that, you might have developed a coping mechanism of, and maybe it's not even like you're aware of it, maybe it's all happening just on this automatic, quick response, but a coping mechanism of thinking about the worst case scenario, because then if you think about the worst case scenario and plan for that, then essentially if it does happen, you're okay, you plan for it. And then if anything below that worst case scenario happens, you're still okay. It's a survival instinct to cope with when you just feel anxious and scared about the world so often. So essentially, yes, I'm a therapist now, but I used to be a massive stress head. Really, really bad. And I believe some myths. So I believe that by being a stressful, stress head, I believed it actually made me more well off. It meant that I put a lot of effort into my work. It meant that I got a good response, therefore, from putting a lot of effort into my work, from stressing about it to the point of, I work really hard on it, and then I got good results. But I didn't know at the time that's a myth, because the reality is, since, studying and learning all about this topic, the reality is I've learned some things that just, shut down that thought I had, that being stressed creates a better response in my life and I achieve more. Because the reality is when we go into stress, the body literally goes into a survival mode. You might have heard that fight, flee, freeze response. And it's in survival mode, it's not in thrival mode, right? And literally, because the body, as a response to that, it's a primal instinct to keep us safe, to get us away from threats such as, back in the day, maybe a lion, a tiger, or just some kind of danger. Instead of, the blood evenly going and being dispersed through the body evenly when you're calm, or, carefully breathing in and out, the body, how when we get stressed, the blood actually redistributes to the body so that we can run away. It's just like how, when we're exercising, the blood changes again so that we can do the exercise. What this means though is when we're stressed, our IQ actually drops because of these bodily changes. The blood's not, evenly going through the body. It's going to these certain places to get you out of there safely. And therefore our IQ drops. And so we're literally not at our most optimum level of intelligence when that happens. And the other thing too is when we're stressed, it's hard, if not impossible, to be creative, to think of creative ideas, to really concentrate at our best capacity on whatever we've got to do. So it is a myth that being stressed makes us achieve more. In fact, we can actually, and we've got to be able to learn, and I'll get to this in a second, but in fact, we can actually be calm most of the time and happy most of the time, and still achieve the same, if not a whole lot more. Still achieve all the same goals from a state of calmness, because instead of getting the motivation from a place of stress, which is what I used to do, you can reach to get the motivation from something else. Maybe you have it as a calling. Maybe you're just really inspired, but a different source of motivation. And the other myth that I believed is that anxiety controls me. I felt for so many years really powerless to anxiety, and I felt like it was just who I am, and I didn't even realize at that time that it was something I could actually change. And so essentially how I overcame it and why I'm here today, helping other people, is, so the first thing that I found most beneficial for myself is understanding took the fear away. Unfortunately, we're not taught in school in as much detail as I believe we should be taught on these topics. But as soon as I understood more about what's happening when I get anxious and why all these things happen and how it works in the body and the brain, it made it a lot easier. So essentially, anxiety is what happens when, like I was saying before, in the past, we've gone into a state of fear, into a state of panic. And at that time, we couldn't express it. So this fear and panic essentially got lodged in the body. It couldn't be expressed, it couldn't come out. Maybe we didn't feel safe to express it. Maybe we were told to stop crying, whatever it is, but it got lodged in the body. So now we're walking around today with these triggers that are invisible. It's just like if you get a paper cut and then it gets touched, ouch. But we're walking around with all these triggers that are invisible, that are all these trapped, unprocessed emotions in the body. But the good thing about this is, first of all, understanding that really helped me. But then it's like there's a solution to that. I used to be so triggered by certain things, by certain words. If someone called me a certain word, that would trigger me, and I didn't even know why. But it's like they touch that ouch, those trapped emotions in my body. But when those trapped emotions get an opportunity to fully be processed, to come out, then you can walk around and someone can say that exact same thing that used to really upset you, and you're fine. You know that, you're just fine. You're confident within yourself, and you're okay with them saying that, no matter what it is. So just to kind of explain how this all works and how to do this. So essentially, I want you to imagine that your whole life, so imagine, from, being in the womb or being in the womb or further back, and all the way up till now, and today is now, so this line, imagine that. And then imagine it keeps going off into the future, which is, it could be completely unpredictable. But imagine this line, it's your whole lifeline. And here you are today. And essentially, because a lot of people think that we have triggers or trauma and anxiety and depression because can only happen because, or PTSD can only happen if we go through abuse or, into the military or things like that. But I want to give you an example to show that it can happen for pretty much any topic. So for example, imagine your timeline, and a really good example for this is imagine going all the way back to when let's call her Jessica. Jessica was about 4, let's say 4 years old, and she's at the shops. She's at the shops with her mum, and maybe Jessica was distracted or a bit naughty, who knows? But for some reason, she was at the shops with her mum in this busy shopping center. It's Christmas. And then she lost her mum. So her mum must have, continued walking, and maybe Jessica got distracted. And as a child, we literally need our parents to survive. We cannot survive on our own. We're literally completely reliant on our parents. We're not like other species, as you know. So what that means is, as a child, if you lose your parent, so Jess lost her parent at the shopping center, her body will go into survival mode complete fear, complete overwhelm, because the body instinctively, this is our instincts, it's not anything Jess is trying to do, it just happens. The body instinctively goes into this survival of, oh no, like I'm lost. And because this emotion of fear and anxiety and where did mum go, and just this instinctual response is so strong, and maybe because she's in this public setting and there's all these people around, so Jess doesn't want to start crying because she doesn't feel safe crying, or maybe she's just like, okay, let's not cry, let's just, try and find mum. But for whatever reason, she didn't feel safe to express those emotions fully. They got trapped in her body at that point in her life. And maybe it was so strong that it also, when it got trapped, it created beliefs of, I get abandoned, or beliefs of, I'm alone, or bad things happen to me, or I'm unsafe, because these emotions were so incredibly strong for her. And that got trapped in the body. And then so Jess essentially, so she gets older, and later in her life, even though she can't consciously remember this, or she might even, even if she remembered it, she might even think, oh, that wasn't that big a deal. The body remembers it. And so essentially every time Jess is alone, or maybe when Jess loses someone through grief, or maybe she loses someone at an event, her body will instinctively, like that paper cut, that trigger of when she was really little gets touched and poked, and she goes once again the same response of, oh no, like I'm being abandoned, I'm lost, I'm alone, and that same response happens because that trigger gets touched. That unprocessed emotion gets touched, and then it flares up and out. And so essentially what happens here is, what this can lead to is, this can lead to a lot of problems in Jess's life. It can lead to problems with, say she wants to move location. She starts thinking about, oh, I really want to move location, and then all of a sudden it gets touched because she's thinking about that, and then she's thinking, if I move, I'll probably be alone for a bit. Trigger gets up, and all those thoughts and all those emotions come up once again. We also see it often affect self-sabotaging relationships without just even knowing that this is happening. Because if someone has a belief that I'm alone or I get abandoned, what we tend to see is it means that the relationship gets sabotaged because of that belief, and it's awful. It's truly awful. It's just what we see happens. And like what that will lead to for Jess as well is she'll have these negative pictures of whenever she feels alone or abandoned, and all these negative emotions associated to it. And like I said, because it was so strong, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and she'll find again and again affected by this. So pretty much like what I was saying here is, so the anxiety of a past event that was unprocessed gets triggered in our day-to-day life today. But here's the solution. So essentially there is a good side to it. And like I did myself, you can release these unprocessed emotions and essentially finish processing them. So emotions, they're meant to be like a wave. They're meant to go through. Like think about when you go for a drive and you see all these things like sign, tree, like cloud, hills, all these things, and none of them get trapped in your body. You just see them and then they're gone. But then sometimes you might see something like a certain type of blue car, like a blue-green car, and then you can't stop thinking about it, you fixate on it because you know someone you don't like that drives that car, and then in your mind you're thinking, is that person? But do you all know what I mean? Some things get trapped in our body and then other things are able to just flow through. So for you to be able to feel released for anxiety, it's about essentially finishing processing these emotions that were trapped in the body and they might have been they could be from so many different situations. But when we do that, when we finish processing and allow those emotions that were trapped And that's what we do with root cause therapy. That's what we do and how we help you. When we do this, then it comes out, and essentially you can walk around and you've no longer got that paper cut. You know, you've fully let go and allowed that, you know, feeling of not feeling safe, or that feeling of feeling anxious or I'm alone, to come out, to be completely expressed, so that you can be free of it. And yeah, that's essentially how it looks. So essentially, like in the body will feel safer because it's not walking through life, and when you think about stuff in the future or someone says something to you, it's not getting activated because it all on an unconscious level, you're not even aware of it. It's just responding to a in the same way to a threat that had happened in the past. Like, think about it this way: if Jess from our story before never felt abandoned, if Jess never in her whole life felt abandoned or alone, like say she had that optimal life today, why would she ever be affected by that? She wouldn't, right? So that's how it works. And the beauty here is when we finish processing these emotions, we let go of them, and then instead of, so okay, say day-to-day life, instead of we're at work, and instead of we get an assignment or a task to do, and instead of that triggering us in some way and bringing up all of this painful emotions and all these painful images, that doesn't happen. And so instead of us having to do the assignment plus also handle that whole spiral of the anxiety and depression, we're left with just the assignment. And what makes life so hard is sometimes, you know, we have to do the work for work or whatever it is, assignment that you got. But what makes it so much harder is that emotional, all the stress that comes up with it. Like, it's so much easier just to go through life and to just respond with the actual data, respond to the actual data rather than respond to that, all the, you know, personal pains that it brought up with it. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So if you would like help with this, if you would like to book in a session, please, I'll put a link below of how you can do it. And I can even just jump on a quick call, see if it's right for you.